Hey you guys, this is Miss Carr again. This video is the last video in the 3 video series that's on our Unit 5 that was about big data. This video is about data visualizations. Now, we briefly discussed data visualizations in that first video when we discussed big data, when we talked about the Census Bureau. Data visualizations are graphical representations of data. Usually, it's some type of chart, graph, or map. These visualizations make it easy for humans to understand the data that they're looking at. We can see the trends, outliers, and patterns in the data. We can also use these visualizations as a way to tell the story of the data because it helps us to understand it more easily. So we can understand it ourselves, and we can use those same visualizations to help explain that data to other people. Now, normally, if we were meeting in class, we would be using a spreadsheet, and we would have some sets of data, and we would use some skills that I would teach you using those spreadsheets to be able to analyze that data and to create our own data visualizations. But since we're not able to do that, we're going to look at some of the different data visualizations that a current event has produced some big data about. And that big data is the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why we're out of school. So I'm going to try to show you guys these visualizations on the computer screen. So this first one is a bubble map, and this is actually on the New York Times website. Now, this bubble map shows the number of cases in each county or parish in all the states in the United States. The larger the bubble, and you all can see the little bubbles that are all over the place. The larger the bubble, the more cases there are in that county. Using this visualization makes it easy for a person to understand the data and see where the highest number of cases are. So we can easily tell up here in this area, which is New York, New Jersey, around there, that's where the highest number of cases are in the United States. But we can also tell that Chicago, that's in this area, that they had a lot of cases. Los Angeles had a lot of cases. Detroit, that area right in there, had a lot of cases. Miami, and even New Orleans. Okay, but we can easily see that here on this bubble map. Now, this is an interactive map, so you can hover over the different little bubbles, and it tells you information about that area. Now, if we zoom in to Mississippi, y'all can see that our bubbles in Mississippi are a lot smaller compared to all the other bubbles. But if I had to pick a spot in Mississippi that probably had the most cases, it's probably right there in Hinds County, and it says it has 898 total cases. Okay, but this is an example of a bubble map. But this is where they took some of that data from the CDC about the numbers of cases, and they created this data visualization just to make it easy for us to see where the cases were and who had the most. All right. This next graph here, this is a line graph. This one's a little more complicated than the line graphs that we're used to. But this shows the daily growth of cases in countries around the world. And we can see that a majority of the lines are decreasing. That means the number of cases that we have every day is getting smaller. So like today was, I think it was I don't know what it was today. I know for Mississippi it was 280 something, or 290 something. But like what that means is whatever the number was today, that means the number tomorrow is smaller. The number after that day is even smaller, and so on. But most of these are green, so we can see that they're decreasing. So there's the U.S. There's the U.K. There's Italy. But we do have a few countries that are still showing increases, such as Brazil. Let's see here. There's Spain. Mexico. India. And Peru is still kind of on the border. And then still increasing is Russia. Okay. But you can kind of see overall from this visualization, you can see that a lot of the countries are starting to decrease in their number of cases. Okay. The next one we're going to look at, and y'all see they have lots of things here. We're going to look at these right here. These are bar charts. This one here is a bar chart. It's a little bit stylized. It's got like the little rounded corners on the shapes and things like that. But it's a bar chart. And then this one is what we call a stacked bar chart. So let's talk about this one over here on the left first. As I said, it's a simple bar chart. And in this one, it shows the severity of the cases of COVID-19. Approximately 80% of cases experience only mild symptoms, while a little less than 14% have severe symptoms that require hospitalization, and a little less than 5% are critical cases where the patient requires intensive care. Now, the chart over here on the right is that stacked bar chart that I mentioned. So you notice down here for each of it's got age ranges down here across the bottom. But for each age range, it has two bars stacked right against each other. Now, if we look at the little key up here, the bar that's on the left represents, and we can see it up here too, Italy. And the bar that's on the right represents the United Kingdom. So if we go across here and look, it's kind of comparing, this is the percentage of people who passed away as a result of COVID-19, but you can see how it compares. This was the death rate in Italy, and this was the death rate in the UK for that same age group. So if we kind of go across and look, we can even see like the number values here. The UK is higher in the 20 to 29 age bracket. The UK is higher in the 30 to 39 age bracket. UK is higher in the 40 to 49. UK is higher in 50 to 59. It's higher in 60 to 69, 70 to 79, and 80 to 89. So the UK is higher in every age group except for the people who are older than 90. And in that age group, Italy was very much higher than the UK. Okay. But we can see that, and you can see how they use this stacked bar chart to compare two different countries. Okay. All right, so now I want to look at this one. Now, this one should look familiar to you guys. This is a word cloud. And if you'll remember, we talked about word clouds in Unit 2 when we were talking about Web 2.0 tools. So some groups did their presentations on word clouds. And we briefly talked about how the items in the word clouds meant that they were more important. Now, when you're talking about a word cloud created from data, what that means is that the items that are larger were included in the data set more times. So, for instance, on this, they probably surveyed people who tested positive for COVID-19 and asked them what their symptoms were. Well, most everybody, or a majority of people, said that they had fever, loss or change of taste or smell, and dry cough. And that's why those are bigger, is because more people experience those symptoms. The things that are smaller around here, those were things that people didn't experience as often. So those were things that they did not report as having the symptoms of. So that was not in the data as many times. All right, so let me go back to my presentation. All right, so here are some other data visualizations, and these are not related to COVID-19. I couldn't find these types of visualizations anywhere in the data online about the pandemic. So I just found these because I thought it was good for you to see them. This one right here is called a mosaic plot. Now, if we just look at this, you can tell from the title up here that this one is about computer sales. We can see going across the different items that they are considering computers are phones, laptops, desktop computers, and tablets. And then across the bottom, you can see this little color-coded key. Acers are the blue color. Dells are the orange color. HPs are the gray. And Lenovo's are the yellow. So this part in here is your mosaic plot. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that this whole plot, this graph, is a rectangular shape. Now, we don't normally see this in a graph or a chart. Normally, it's like a bar chart, and the bars are all different heights. But with a mosaic plot, you start off with a big rectangular shape. Now, this first column, as I said, represents phones. But if you notice and compare the width of this column to the width of the other columns, you notice that the width of the phone column is a lot larger. So what that means is that there were more phones sold than laptops, desktops, or tablets. Okay? Now, if you look at the size of these columns again, which one sold the least? Okay, so we can tell that tablets sold the least number because its column is the narrowest. Now, within each of these columns, you see it matches up to this color-coded brand down at the bottom. So of the phones, the most phones that were sold were of the Acer brand, because you see this portion, this color in that bar is the tallest. And then on phones, the brand that sold the least is the Lenovo, because you see that's the smallest part of that column. And so let's see here. I think on desktops, it's pretty close between the blue and the orange here, but I think the orange is a little bit bigger. But on desktops, if the orange is the biggest, that means the desktop mostly were Dells that sold. And then here on tablets, you guys can see that all 4 of those are pretty close to being the same size. So those are pretty even. And then laptops kind of matched what was on the phones. Mostly Acers. The fewest that sold were Lenovo's. But this is a mosaic plot. Right? The next data visualization is a histogram. Now, a histogram is similar to a bar chart, except it shows the value of something in between a range of numbers. So, for instance, this chart shows tree heights. And so you know as well as I do that if we went out and measure the height of all the trees, well, they're not going to be exactly the same all the time. So they just took a range of the height. So between 100 centimeters and 150 centimeters tall, and they counted how many trees were within that height range. And then they put the bar here, and it looks like this was maybe 4 trees that were in that height range. And then, for instance, you notice this bar is 150 centimeters to 200 centimeters, and there were 30 trees that were within that range. 200 to 250, that looks like maybe it's 26 or 27 trees that were in that range. Between 250 and 300 centimeters, there were 50 trees in that height range. And then from 300 to 350, it looks like there were 11 trees in that height range. So this is just a better way to show that data because the heights of the trees are not all the same. Now this could be used, let me see here where I have that example. Y'all know when I made the survey for the happiness, I might just have to go back to here where I had it on my handout. This right here. So when I asked what time did you complete the task, and I had these ranges, this would be a place where it would be good to create a histogram. Since I didn't ask for an exact time, I just know it was between those 2 ranges, and I could have a chart if I was asking for like how often did you do something in this time frame. But I could ask for that and put that amount in between that range on that chart. Okay. So there are many different data visualizations, and we only covered a few of them. Some others that we did not look at, but that are data visualizations are area graphs, pie charts, box and whiskers, which I think you guys talked about in algebra class. We also have donut charts, pictograms, pyramid charts, and honestly, there's many others. Thing to remember is that when we have large amounts of data, computers can help us to create these visualizations. And these visualizations are important because they help us understand the data more clearly and help us to explain the data to others. All right, so you guys have an activity. The data visualization activity in your packet. So let's read the instructions together. It says to gather some simple data. So you guys can use that survey that you wrote the 5 questions for. You could use that if you want to. You can gather some other data if you would like. I've got some other example ideas. You can count how many of each color there are in a bag of M&Ms or Skittles. You can count the number of coins of each type in your change jar. You can count how many of each word is on a page in a book or a magazine. You can record how many push-ups people of different age groups can do. You can survey people to see what their favorite colors are, etc. You can choose and collect whatever data that you wish. So you have some leeway there. So think about it and see if you can come up with something to record for data. And as I said, if you can't think of anything, you can try using one of those examples. Now, after you have your data, I want you to come up with a data visualization and draw it below. So think of some of the examples we looked at. The bar charts. You could do a pie chart if you wanted to. You could do a line graph. You could do one of those histograms. But pick one of those data visualizations, and then I want you to draw it using your data that you collect to make a picture of your data. Okay? All right, so this has been the third lesson about data visualizations, and this wraps up Unit 5 about big data. Y'all have a great summer.